Good afternoon and welcome to the Washington Report with Tea Party Patriots Action. I'm Bill Pasco, Tea Party Patriots man in Washington. Let's get to it. The House will return Wednesday and remain in session through Friday. The Senate will return Monday, today, and stay in session until Thursday. Last week in the House came back on Tuesday and voted to pass two bills under suspension of the rules. On Wednesday, the House passed a rule governing floor consideration of several bills. Then the House took up and passed H-Res 1274, providing that Section 11 of House Resolution 1224 shall have no force or effect. Then the House took up and passed another resolution under suspension of the rules. Then the House took up and passed H.R. 1346, the Nationwide Consumer and Fuel Retailer Choice Act. Then the House took up and passed H-Con Res 96, expressing support for law enforcement officers. Then, under suspension of the rules, the House agreed to two resolutions. The first, H-Res 1251, expressed the sense of the House that anti-Semitism is bad. And the second, H-Res 1259, expressed the sense of the House that President Trump should prioritize securing the release of 5 Chinese citizens who have been wrongfully detained. No one voted against either resolution. On Thursday, the House took up and passed H.R. 6260, the Keeping Violent Offenders Off Our Streets Act, by a vote of 243 to 179, with 32 Democrats crossing party lines to vote with the Republicans. Then the House took up and rejected H-Con Res 75, a War Powers resolution directing the President, pursuant to Section 5C of the War Powers Act, to remove United States armed forces from hostilities against the Islamic Republic of Iran. The vote was 212 to 212. A tie vote loses. Then the House took up and passed H.R. 5625, the Cashless Bail Reporting Act, by a vote of 308 to 116, with 96 Democrats crossing party lines to vote with the majority Republicans. Then the House took up and passed H.R. 8365, the Monitor Accountability Act, by a vote of 219 to 204. Then the House took up H.R. 8469, the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2027. After considering and rejecting one amendment, the House passed the bill by a vote of 400 to 15. And then they were done. This week in the House will return Wednesday with the first vote set for 6:30 p.m. At that time, the House is scheduled to consider 16 bills under suspension of the rules. On Thursday and for the balance of the week, the House will consider 5 bills pursuant to a rule. They are H.R. 1041, the Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act, H.R. 6047, the Sherry Briley and Eric Edmondson Veterans Benefits Expansion Act of 2026, H.R. 1329, the Smithsonian American Women's History Museum Act, H.R. 2616, the Stopping Indoctrination and Protecting Kids Act, and H.R. 4312, the SCORE Act. In addition, the House may consider H-Con Res 86, directing the President, pursuant to Section 5C of the War Powers Resolution, to remove United States armed forces from hostilities against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And assuming that Reconciliation 2.0, the DHS funding bill, passes the Senate, the House will try to get it passed before leaving town for a 2-week Memorial Day recess. Last week in the Senate came back on Monday and agreed to S-Res 690, an executive resolution to authorize the en bloc consideration in executive session of certain nominations on the executive calendar. Then the Senate voted to end debate on the nomination of Kevin Warsh to be a member of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. On Tuesday, the Senate voted to confirm him to that position. Then the Senate voted to end debate on the nomination of Kevin Warsh to serve as chairman of the Federal Reserve System. That's a wholly separate nomination. On Wednesday, by a vote of 49 to 50, the Senate rejected a motion to discharge S.J. Res. 163, a joint resolution to direct the removal of United States armed forces from hostilities within or against the Islamic Republic of Iran that have not been authorized by Congress. Then, by a vote of 99 to 0, the Senate agreed to end debate on the motion to proceed to S. Res. 526, a resolution offered by Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy to withhold the pay of senators if a government shutdown occurs. Then the Senate voted to confirm Kevin Warsh to serve as chairman of the Federal Reserve System Board of Governors. Next up was a motion to proceed to S.J. Res. 132, a Congressional Review Act resolution of disapproval of the rules submitted by the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection, also known as the CFPB, relating to the withdrawal of the rule relating to examinations for risks to active duty service members and their covered independents. The motion was rejected. Then the Senate rejected a second and then a third motion to proceed to a second and then a third Congressional Review Act resolution of disapproval against a rule submitted by the CFPB. Then the Senate agreed to an en bloc motion to end debate on a number of executive branch nominations, and then they were done. This week in the Senate will return Monday with the first vote set for 5:30 p.m. At that time, the Senate will proceed to a roll call vote on the confirmation en bloc of a number of executive branch nominations. Then, based on the Majority Leader's cloture filings, I anticipate we'll see a vote on a motion to end debate on the nomination of Sharia Akins Clark to serve as a United States District Judge for the District of South Carolina. And the Senate will also likely vote on a motion to end debate on the nomination of Evan Rickier to serve as a judge for the District Court of the Virgin Islands for a term of 10 years. And, of course, we expect the Senate will hold a vote-a-rama and a vote on a DHS funding bill. But first, let's talk more about the Save America Act. The Senate has moved on from its consideration of the Save America Act. After several weeks of floor debate, Majority Leader Thune had to pass a funding bill to reopen those parts of the Department of Homeland Security that Democrats would vote for. And that meant moving the SAVE Act from its privileged position as the current business of the Senate, and it takes a new motion to proceed to get back on it. And Majority Leader Thune doesn't think he has even 50 votes to get back on it, so he hasn't tried. President Trump tried a new tack over the weekend with a Truth Social post Saturday morning urging that the Save America Act be attached to other must-pass bipartisan legislation on housing or government surveillance powers. Quote, "We cannot, as a country, put up with this any longer," he wrote on Saturday. Quote, "Voter ID and proof of citizenship must be approved now. Crooked mail-in voting must be stopped. Put it all in the housing and FISA bills," unquote. Now let's go back to DHS funding and reconciliation 2.0. Time is running out for congressional Republicans determined to meet President Trump's June 1 deadline to pass a reconciliation bill to fund immigration and customs enforcement and customs and border protection without needing any Democrat votes in either chamber. The text of the language that was developed by the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee went to the Senate parliamentarian for the birdbath on Thursday. She began with language created by the Homeland Security Committee and knocked out language that funds CBP and provides an extra $2.5 billion for DHS. Senate Republicans said this was not unexpected, and they vowed to redraft the language to get it in compliance with Byrd rules. Over the weekend, the parliamentarian declared that the $1 billion included for the Secret Service, of which about $220 million is slated to provide protection related to the new White House ballroom, failed the birdbath. Again, Senate Republicans said they would tweak the language. Senate and House Republican leaders have a problem on their hands. On both sides of the Capitol dome, there are vulnerable Republican members who just don't want to vote for a package that includes money for anything related to the White House ballroom. Democrats have made clear they want to use GOP support for that project as a campaign issue. And many Republicans in both chambers don't want to have to defend that vote back home. Many, in fact, would be quite pleased if the Senate parliamentarian just vetoed the language herself, so it would be removed from the package and they wouldn't have to vote on the issue at all. But the president wants it. So the Senate Republican leadership will try to tweak the language to win the parliamentarians' approval. Assuming the leadership can find language to pass muster with the parliamentarian, the bill will move forward. The Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee will mark up its section of the bill at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Democrats on the committee have amendments ready for consideration on ICE officers' behavior and forcing transparency from Trump administration officials. The Senate Budget Committee will meet at 9:30 a.m. Wednesday morning to mark up the two sections and stitch them together to create the second big, beautiful bill. Then debate will begin, 20 hours of debate that every reconciliation bill is limited to. That means there's no filibuster. Republicans will control half of that, 10 hours, and they'll yield their time back. So we'll have 10 hours on the Senate floor of Democrats excoriating President Trump and Republicans for everything under the sun. And then, sometime on Thursday, the vote-a-rama will begin, and Senate Democrats will be allowed to offer all manner of amendments to the reconciliation bill as long as they're germane to one of the two committees that produced the underlying legislative text. And Republicans will have to vote on those amendments at a simple 50-vote threshold. So if on any proposed amendment 4 Republicans decided to defect, assuming everybody's voting, the amendment would win. Assume Leader Thune can keep the Senate Republicans together long enough to get the bill passed. It then goes to the House, where it has similar problems on the White House ballroom funding front. And because there are a bunch of states with primary elections going on tomorrow, the House won't meet this week until Wednesday, so they've got a short week to try and move this bill before they leave town for their 2-week Memorial Day recess. Stay tuned. Now let's talk for a moment about Reconciliation 3.0. Once the House gets done with Reconciliation 2.0 to fund DHS, attention will turn to Reconciliation 3.0, at least for a time. I say at least for a time because while it is the case that House GOP leaders are now committed to trying to push through a third reconciliation bill later this summer, Senate GOP leaders do not share their enthusiasm or their determination for the project. A group of House Republicans met last Tuesday to discuss passing a third reconciliation bill before the summer recess begins. The agenda is still unsettled, but there's a wide variety of issues that could find their way into such a bill. Stay tuned on that. Now for the latest on the redistricting wars. In case you didn't see Friday's news, the Supreme Court of the United States told Virginia Democrats to go pound sand, rejecting their long-shot Hail Mary appeal with a one-sentence rejection and no opinion or dissent filed by any justice. That's another way of saying even the 3 liberal justices on the Supreme Court thought the Virginia Democrats' emergency appeal was so meritless that it didn't even deserve a rote defense. Even Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson declined to defend the appeal. That's really saying something. So Virginia's current map will be used for the fall election. That map produced 6 Democrats and 5 Republicans, rather than the 10-to-1 Democrat to Republican split the Virginia Democrats map would have produced. Virginia Republicans aren't out of the woods yet, though. They may have saved 4 seats from certain flipping by creative gerrymandering, but 2 of the 5 Republican-held seats in the state are targeted by Democrats, and the GOP incumbents have a fight on their hands. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court also vacated Alabama's court-ordered map, which has 2 majority-minority districts in it, and allowed the state to go back to its 2023 map, which only had 1. Consequently, 4 districts will be affected, the 1st, 2nd, 6th, and 7th. So the governor has called a special primary election for those congressional districts. The special primary election will be held on Tuesday, August 11. In those elections, there will be no runoff election. The general elections in those districts will take place on November 3rd, the same day as all the other general elections. And that's our Washington report for this week. If you've got any questions or comments, please drop us a line at jenny.beth@teapartypatriots.org. That's jenny.beth@teapartypatriots.org. If you want me to answer a question during the broadcast, just put "for broadcast" in the subject line. We won't be back next week because it's Memorial Day. So we'll see you in 2 weeks with our next edition of the Washington Report. Same time, same channel, 2 weeks from now. Until then, be well and be active.